I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just wanted to see anyone. Piss off!
That's the one. Because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian. So,
Hey, Manuel Camp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to your Hump Day edition of Corona TV. I am Joseph Jaffe. I am your host, and I am pleased to be back with you for another good dose of halo, of light, of hope, of positivity, of optimism. It's what you would expect from Corona TV. Now, let's start off with something a little bit more serious, something to consider. Today is International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. The International Day for the Abolition of Slavery is a yearly event that is organized and has been organized since 1986 by the United Nations General Assembly. This is amazing. An estimated 40.3 million people are in modern slavery, including 24.9 in forced labor and 15.4 million in forced marriages, and 1 in 4 victims of modern slavery are children. So we always think about ourselves and our lives, and certainly living in the United States of America, for those that are in the US, we think of our freedom. We, of course, are aware of and continue to be aware of the role that slavery has played in this country, but it is still absolutely active and very much of a factor around the world. So hello to everyone. My mom is here. She's watching. Mr. Steve Garfield says, dressed up, looking good. Joey Dumont says, look at you, all dressed up. And Tom Morris, fresh off his anniversary dinner. And Morris Wine says, looking good. Great to be here. So we're going to have to find out why I am dressed to impress. There's got to be a reason, right? I'm not sure what it is, but as soon as I figure it out, I will let you know. Even Faith James is here and she's watching. And we just enjoyed having Faith on the community show from last week. Tom says, Jeepers, I look like a slob by contrast to the host, Bond, Joseph Bond, licensed to inspire, something like that. I don't know, maybe, who knows? Well, let's talk about birthdays, shall we? We have a bunch of them. Happy birthday to, going up and down, there's Mr. David Cohen, there is Bob Hanna, Zach McTee, happy birthday. And finally, my LinkedIn birthdays came back. They kind of disappeared Monday and Tuesday. They seem to be back kind of today. Only 3 people. So I had to just make the font bigger. So happy birthday to all of you. Now, as a reminder, Corona TV is now at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time every day in order to take advantage of lunch. If you're on the East Coast, breakfast if you're on the West Coast, and a drink, a nice cocktail if you're in Europe or beyond. Today actually was meant to be welcoming the wonderful Ford Saeks onto the show, but unfortunately he is not feeling well today. He is under the weather, and so we'll be rescheduling for January. So in very, very short notice, I had to tap into my arsenal, my bank of interesting men or women or people in the world. And in this particular case, I have the most interesting man in the world. And I'm not talking about the guy on top. I'm talking about the guy at the bottom, Mr. Jan Zlotnick, Executive Brand and Creative Director at the Exit brand, but now author, and we're going to hear all about his new book shortly. But before we do that, I wanted to talk to you today about criticism. And Jan, I told you there's going to be a lot of surprises on the show today. This may be one of them. By the way, Bob Heyman says too formal. See, you can never please everyone all the time. I don't even need to give you a soliloquy because I think this is kind of the point. By the way, Bob is here. He's looking forward to the episode. And Richie Glassberg, another former guest, says black tie, black shirt, tailored jacket. What's up? Interview. Yeah, it is an interview. I'm interviewing Jan today, obviously. Normally we would say, obviously, in the corporate world, when anyone was dressed in a tie, that they either were going on a job interview or, unfortunately, were going to a funeral. I am not doing any of those. I'm giving an interview. And finally, Mr. Chip Griffin, I joined late, but I assume there is a story behind your attire. Well, of course, there's a story. There's always a story behind everything that I do. Look, I'm just going to come out and say it. I suck at taking criticism. I don't care if it's constructive or not. I really just hate it. I'd like to tell you that I'm actually getting better at it, but I might just be lying just a little bit. Maybe it's my fragile ego being bruised, or a mix of neurosis, paranoia, and insecurity. Yesterday, my guest on the show today, so yesterday we're talking and he became my guest today, well, he gave me some criticism on my wardrobe. He apparently didn't like my Spider-Man t-shirt from Monday's show. He felt it brought the show down from the high quality level that it has developed and delivered on a consistent basis. It's why I'm wearing this collared shirt and tie today, to stick it to him. Hey, Jan, don't feel too bad right now, or if you are, you really shouldn't be. I'm just messing with you. I actually grew a lot from yesterday's interaction, and I look forward to discussing this with you on the show in a few minutes. Also, in fairness, you did ask me if you could give me constructive feedback, and I initially said no, again, just messing with you, but then I said bring it on, so it serves me right. Well, what did I learn from my interaction? For starters, get over yourself. When someone gives you criticism, excluding, of course, your sadistic boss, it's because they care. It's because they want to help. It says more about them and their level of comfort with you than it actually says about you. Consider the reverse to prove the point. Does it provide a service or a disservice to you when someone has valid and valuable advice and then they withhold it from you for fear of upsetting you? How is that helping anyone? How is that helping you? The primary benefit of receiving criticism is threefold. One, you don't have to take it. Two, others might be thinking the exact same way. And three, it might just be the right advice. Our tendency when giving feedback is to sugarcoat it and couch it with artificial and meaningless filler. It's why so many corporate execs and even politicians continue to make dumb decisions, because they're surrounded by yes people, because they're detached and out of touch with reality. No one wants to attend a performance of success theater. So my advice to anyone out there is this: when someone gives you criticism, constructive or otherwise, instead of trying to explain it or justify it to them, or even justify yourself, which is equally meaningless filler, focus your energy on determining if you're going to considerately ignore or, in fact, follow that advice. That decision might just be the difference between success and failure in your life. Well, now it's time to bring on my guest. Jan Zlotnick, he's a husband, a father, a brother, a branding guy, an author. But instead of giving you a whole rigmarole and bio, he actually asked me if I wouldn't mind just showing a video. And this is actually a video that he created, and I'm sure he'll talk a little bit more about it.
Once upon this time, right now, There is a city of dreams being built by a different stripe of dreamers, self-starters bent on igniting a new engine in Detroit. The ones who respect, not fear the bleak, emerge and rise up stronger to move an entire city and shake up the world watching them do it. Never settling on just dreaming, living with a fire to make real things. Whole lives happen from their daring do. Never running from, but with a seriously wild, creative nature, going into it, embracing it. Dream stronger. Build it in Detroit. Got a dream to build? Tell us about it at #EmbraceTheBleak.
Welcome to the show, Jan Zlotnick. You finally made it on Corona TV.
Thank you. And I can add fashion critic to my bio.
You can. So the story behind, which obviously I alluded to in my soliloquy, is you gave me some advice, and I followed your advice, even though I've given you a tough time about giving me the advice. And so I dressed up for you. It is the second time that I've worn a tie on the show, and I actually feel okay with it. And you know what? So does Chip. He says, I'm probably old-fashioned, but I do feel like a tie has become too casual across the board this year. I get it, but I still don't like it as well. So there you go. I don't know if I'm going to wear a tie tomorrow, but I'm kind of enjoying it now.
You look great, and it complements the background, which I also like. And I don't have one piece of criticism. Your seated soliloquy was perfect.
No, but seriously, there must be something that you can give me to make it better. Come on, it can't be perfect.
Well, yeah, okay, you're right. You said the phrase meaningless filler. I don't think you need the word meaningless.
I was actually joking. I didn't want you to give me more feedback, but it's fine, whatever. Oh, someone just made another comment, and I was just about to click on this, which is Tom says, Peter Parker went shopping and looks very nice today. And look who's here. It's Millie Garfield.
Hey, Millie.
I think this might be Millie's first official comment on Corona TV. So that's awesome. I'm super excited that Millie is here. My mom and Millie, what a great 1-2 combination. By the way, Chip says, good suck up to start the interview, Jan. Well, this is the end of the show. We don't have anything to promote. Let's just go straight to the after show. Jan, you are the most interesting man in the world. This is not the right title for you. I like this one much better. The most interesting man in the world. You've grown the beard. It is the color of the beard says this man is wise. He's weathered. He has wisdom. You've got the nice dark chocolatey backgrounds. Do you feel like the most interesting man in the world in 2020?
I would be happy being the most interesting man in my house. And when my two sons aren't around, I might be, but I'm not the most interesting person in the world. That would definitely be Melanie, my wife. But my two sons, Tyler, who's in entertainment at Amazon Prime in LA, and my son, Jared, who is a VP in sales at Google, they're definitely more interesting. And it would be hard for me after, I don't know, what do you have, 130 shows? And I've seen a lot of them. It would be hard for me to say I'm the most interesting man on this show. And you've got Joey Dumont and Tom Mars and Leslie Laredo, Natalie.
Well, you want to know what number you are today. You are officially interview, give or take, number 158, believe it or not.
Interesting. Almost added up to 23.
Exactly. 23. What I wonder what number 23 could represent. We're going to get to that in a moment. Mr. Howard Greenstein. I never know how he likes to pronounce it, but it's good to see you here on the show as well. It's great to see so many people here to Jan, to celebrate you at the end of the day. And it's been a year of so much serendipity and growth and connection. It's just been tremendous in terms of, even we knew each other from all these weird, like our lives, like strands of DNA intersected. I will never forget, as a consultant, coming into your office. It was just this brick room. It felt like just a large, huge room. And I honestly felt like I was in the presence of a very eclectic, original, creative type. And we worked on a project. I forget what the project was, but I just remember how thoroughly I enjoyed meeting this lone mercenary that was out there blazing his path. And I guess that's really been your path, which is, not being out of choice for the most part, a corporate guy.
Yeah, that was at the Zlotnik group, which was my first solo agency. I had one before that with 3 other partners called Toolbox, but the Zlotnik group was in Tribeca, and that was the loft in Tribeca that you were in. It was basically a living room. There were no walls, and it was all living room seating, and it was all to have a Socratic type of process of people who have great minds and hearts like you. And we used the word rethink. Back then, it was a little bit fresh. And we just listened to each other. And as a group, we came up with ideas.
And I remember at the same time, I had used rethink as well, think, as opposed to your, right? Rethink. And I think we both used it at the same time. And that kind of was almost a serendipity between our 2 approaches. Rethink as a word, but also think. Like we needed to do more thinking. There wasn't enough thought or thoughtfulness or thought provocation. There wasn't enough. And I think we brought that to the table. But before we get into all the businessy stuff, as you know, because you've been a regular on the show, I've got to learn a lot about people, and we do our little fun facts, and it's great because I learned about you. I learned, for example, this is a hell of a story. This really does prove that you are one of the most interesting men in the world. You have a hell of a story about the running of the bulls. You ran the bulls in Pamplona, which, by the way, which person doesn't want to, cross that off their bucket list? And then you said something happened to you that you were warned to not attend to if it happened to anyone else while I was running. So why don't you tell the story?
Yeah, at the beginning of, first of all, it's kind of like a weekend where you're up all night, and we didn't have a room. We traveled down from, the border of Spain and France, my roommate and I, and we slept under stairwells. And in the morning, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning, there was the ritual of prayer for the runners, and then a choice that you had to make of where you would stand in that winding alley kind of road that leads to the arena. It's a short run. It looks longer, but the problem is that bulls are very fast. They're like a horse in terms of speed, and I never knew that. So the idea of outrunning the bulls was the first thing I had to get out of my head. And these 6 South Africans who I met.
No way.
They had run it many times. They met me at one of the prayers for our safety and health. And I asked them, where should I stand? And they said, well, we've done it a lot of times. We like to go right down to the front of the gate. It's like a corral. When they open up the corral, the bulls come out, there's steer accompanying them, and people throw fireworks in the street to rile them up because they don't know they should be running. They're just like, what is everyone doing here? So they said, we're going to go down there, but you should stay a little bit closer to, a little bit further up. And these bulls run as fast as horses. So don't try to outrun them. Try to get out of the way. And then here's the big warning. If someone falls down while you're running, because many people will, do not try to help them up, because we know you would try to do that after talking to you. Because if you do, it'll cause even more of a problem with more people and a stampede. So don't do that. So they went down to the front. I was not quite at the front, but I could sort of see them. And I was near an area which on the right side of me, had a like 20-foot slate wall. So there's no indentation to hide in. You want to get past that wall and be able to get to a door frame of a shop. The streets bordered off by temporary barriers that are put up for this event. So you don't want to go into the barrier because people are there. You don't want to attract the bull to hurt anyone. Go into a door frame was my thought. So the fireworks go off, the bulls start coming, and I have a good lead. I don't really see them, but I can feel them behind me. And I was pushed and I fell. So I'm now on the ground and no one is helping me, which is, they're following the rules. So I managed to get up, and now the bulls are around me. And I managed to get past that wall into a door frame and felt like that wasn't enough. So I found a cable on the side of the building. It was an electric cable, I guess, or power cable. And I climbed it enough, I thought, to avoid a horn piercing my butt. And then they went past me. It was like 3 seconds and it was over. So that was it.
It sounds so weird because it sounds like the running of the bulls, it's a whole process, but really to be able to chalk it off your bucket list, you really just want to like do it for about 10 seconds and then just dive into a window or a doorway and let the thing just pass by. It almost seems like a contradiction of an event, but it's something that who wouldn't want that? I mean, the adrenaline, the experience must have been just... of course, that memory is going to stick with me. Thankfully, it didn't physically stick with me. But the thing that I'll always remember is the camaraderie of me and my friend Kevin, and our backpacking to get to Pamplona from France, and then the partying. Really, the partying that was just, I can't imagine it now. Just sea of people and people sharing each other's bottles of wine and dancing and just no judgment, just pure adrenaline camaraderie. All right, so I love that story, and I have another story, or I have another interesting fun fact of you or for you on your behalf. But I think it really comes down to, I noticed something so amazing this week. It was so special for me. It was Tom Morris's wedding anniversary. And I just looked at all the comments on his Facebook post, and they were all part of our community. There was you, and there was Joey, and there was Bob, but there were people like Faith and Bruce, and I just felt pride. I was just so happy to have been a part of this beautiful community, and I know that you've struck up a friendship, a really terrific friendship with Joey DeMont. And I only bring him up because your other fun fact was, as always, you kind of you warble and gargle on, and I can't make heads or tails of what the hell you're saying. There are dots and there are hyphens and parentheses, something about doing push-ups every day. But I figured, you know what, I'm going to take your push-ups, I'm going to double it up with Joey, and I will see your push-ups and I will raise you. The fact that you've gone to, like, I don't know, SEAL Team 6 training, or you've done all of this training with Joey. So, the funniest part of this image is that Joey was obviously giving a keynote at the time, because he's still got the microphone like attached to his mouth, which is weird how he can run and give a keynote at the same. I don't know how he did it. But I don't know. Where do you want to go with that? You want to talk about your push-ups? You want to talk about Joey? You want to talk about, becoming SEAL Team 6? I don't know. You take it away.
Joey and I just, thanks to your show, we, felt this affinity. His K-boy dudes, his K-dudes, they're so great when they come on the show, and just other times when I've talked to him, and he being an author of a really intense book. Mine's kind of intense, but his is really rich about his own life. He was telling me early on in the pandemic that he was going to take on, the importance of keeping your body in shape, because that's connected, of course, to your mind being in shape. So we talked about him he was going to take a do push-ups every day, like a lot of people would, but do a lot of push-ups. I think he was doing, I don't know, couple hundred push-ups every other day, or maybe you'd get 500 in a week. I don't know what it was, but he was doing a lot of push-ups. And so I sat down and I did the math on that and said, what would my goal be for this? And how long do I want to do it? How long is the pandemic going to last? So I mathematically figured out that, well, I gave myself a goal of doing it for a full year because I wanted this to become a habit. I was also inspired by James Clear, who's, I think, on your show, who did Atomic Habits, or maybe he was on another show.
He wasn't, but now you know. Now, I mean, you did it. You delivered Peter Rourke with Dog as My Co-Pilot, so now you've got more homework. But carry on.
Now we've got to get James Clear of Atomic Habits, and the idea of forming a habit. So dropping down to doing your push-ups is a habit. If you do it a certain amount of time. So I give it a year, and I mathematically figured out. I started with, let me do something ridiculous. Like I've run marathons in my life. That's kind of ridiculous, but I've never run an ultra marathon. I think that's 100 miles. So I said, what would be an extreme thing in the push-up area? So I started with, could I do 1 million in a year? 12 months, break it down, how many days? And I did the math, and to do 1 million, I would have to do like a couple thousand a day. and that means how many times I wouldn't be able to even eat. So I kept breaking it down, and I got down to a number that I thought was pretty silly, and that's been my number. It's 100,000, and I have 3 months to go. I just broke 70,000 actually yesterday, and I have 3 months to go. And 70,000 really makes me feel like I can get the rest of the way, barring any injury, because I can see the light now, sort of like we can see the vaccine. So I'm on track for my birthday end of February or anniversary early March to get 100,000, and I'll have my 2 boys there or on Zoom. So it's just a little thing, and it makes me realize that it connects to other things, to keep in shape and to be mentally in shape. That type of thing.
I see your second book already. 1 million push-ups. You can do it, but I love this story because you started with such a stretch number. And that was the dream, and that was the, that was the, what do they call it, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. And then you brought it down to still a pretty awesome number, but one that you actually realized you could hit. I was thinking, like, had you gone the other way around, started with 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 and made your way up to 100,000, it would be a different process, even though you would end up at the same number. But it's something that I was on a show this morning. I was interviewed on a podcast this morning, talking about Corona TV, talking about content strategy. And I said to Jackie, who interviewed me, I said, Jackie, there's another C word that is actually more important than content, than community, than all these other C words we use. And that word is consistency. It is the consistency of the habit. It is the consistency of the show. It is the consistency of the push-up that gives us that structure and that another C, which is that comfort, that ability to be anchored and to find that solid, I think, ground that gives us the clarity, the mental strength, and even the physical strength to keep going. And so it's just funny how this morning I was talking about it with respect to doing streaming shows, and you're doing push-ups. Again, I think it's the same concept at the end of the day.
Yeah, the process thing, I'm big into process in branding and brand positioning. There's a lot of process in that. I mean, it shouldn't be a lot, really. It's a short amount of process, actually, to do it right. So you do it simply. But the process really taught me that there is really wisdom in the idea of one step, leads to the journey. When you do one push-up, it does lead to 5, on your hand to count. And that leads to 5 each on your fingers. That leads to 25. And that's a lot easier to do 4 times to get to 100 that before seemed 100. I'm going to right now do 100 push-ups. not bad if you break it into 4 groups of 25, and each of those is a hand 5 times. It happens like that. And before you know it, you've done 100. You know, I mean, it might take a week to get there. I know it took me time. And then I do that 100, you know, like 5, 6, 7 times a day by just during the day, during, you know, taking a break from reading or a show, you know, and doing it and just getting it done. And it was really instructive about just do one thing right now.
So it's funny because the real reason, as always, the person that keeps you honest is Joey DeMond, who says, actually, you just wanted to double what he did, which was 1,000 a week. So there's another C word, which is competitive,
competitive.
which we find out about you. Judy, who of course, amazing guest on the show from last week. I think it was last week. It's funny how like all these things blend together. She wants you to talk about how this impacted you mentally, emotionally, and helped you manage your state.
Yeah, another C word is companionship. So, you know, having my wife and I pretty much isolated, we couldn't see our 2 sons. One son who recently got married was doing an Airbnb tour to be out of the city. So he was away, and we loved their adventure. It was a good idea. Our other son's in LA. So it was my wife and I pretty much secluded. And that companionship meant everything to me. But another companionship are the things that you do. The things that you do when you wake up and during your day. And I found that push-up regime became a companion of mine in a weird way. The little notebook that I keep on me, I think I have, always have it in my back pocket where I write down stuff, a companion of mine. This show, Corona TV, is a companion of mine. So, you know, with all the loneliness that there is in this pandemic, I look for those companions that Judy's speaking about.
I love how you take animate and inanimate and actually assign life and meaning and emotion to something that is inanimate, whether it is a ritual or in your case, a push-up. I think, you know, one of the things that's come out of the show in the last few days, weeks even, are these struggles, these contradictions, these battles to reconcile. And your quote is this one, which is, life itself still remains a very effective therapist. And I think that's certainly a segue into your phenomenal book, and I don't use that lightly. This was said by Karen Horney, who is a German psychoanalyst who practiced in the United States during her later career. Her theories question some traditional Freudian views, which sounds interesting, but enough about Karen or Karens. Let's focus on you, Jan. You know what I was going to say? Tell us the story about this book that you wrote, but you put a video together on your site, and then I went and found lots of things to criticize with that video. For example, I didn't like the fact that you shot it vertically. I felt you could have zoomed. There were no captions. And so I decided to fix your video. And so here is my version of your video to introduce your book.
It's Jan from Jan's Little Notebook. Recently, over the past few months, I found myself asking these questions out loud to my parents who had died many years ago. Questions like, hey, Mom, did you ever think that I didn't love you? And Dad, did you ever feel completely defeated? A bunch of other questions like this, and just having them in my notebook, referring to them, really helped me move my life forward. A friend of mine saw what I had written, and she said, you ought to put this in a real book. It might help other people. And so I did. And that was really the start of the website, Jan's Little Notebook, where I hope to put a lot of things like this, ideas that I just bring to life. I hope you check it out. Maybe it'll help you or somebody you know. And I'd love to know what you think and how you feel. So get in touch with me. You can see the contact information on the website, and I wish you well. Peace and love. Thank you.
Much better.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was the video? Look what just arrived yesterday.
Whoa.
Already. Amazing. You move quickly. Tell us the story of this book. Obviously I showed the video. That was just my little friendly way of giving you something else, to use or throw away. But tell us the story, because it's a beautiful story. And I really believe this book is the anthem to 2020. I think this book captures the essence of those struggles, of the conflict, of finding inner peace, wrestling with the past, the present, the future, dealing with regret. It's all captured so eloquently and succinctly. So, Jan, over to you to tell us and add to that video in your words, the origins of this book.
Well, really, I found myself in the middle of the night, more nights than I realized, looking up at the ceiling fan, and thinking, was I dreaming or was I awake? But I was asking questions to my parents who had died many years ago. I was probably asking questions of other people as well. And ultimately, I'm asking questions of myself. So as I said, I always keep this notebook by me. I have a bunch of these kinds of notebooks as a creative and a writer. And I started writing them down because, it's hard to remember your dreams. So I wrote them down. And as I said in that video, a friend saw it and said, hey, let's make a book. And I called a designer, art director, and great illustrator friend who I worked with named Catherine Budai, Budhi. And Catherine is in Austin, Texas now. And she and I worked on a lot of other things, including 2 books that we published for Sprinkler, a social media company. When her father died and I went to the funeral in Staten Island, she and I spoke and we kept in touch, and we talked about that kind of death and that kind of life and what it means to you. And I asked her if she'd be interested in helping me. So for me, the book really works in helping me, and I hope others, because on each page, there's one question. I mean, literally on a spread, there's just one question and one of her pieces of original art. And so the idea was to be almost like an art exhibit where you're walking through the rooms and each room has just one piece of art on it and one question that you can just take your time with. That was the idea of it. And it really helped me, helped both of us. And we just put it together and created the book. That's basically it. And I sent out an advance proof of it. I got some great reviews back, and now I hope that total strangers will get something out of this and share their insights on Amazon.
And Ray, by the way, for those of you that are watching, I have put a link to purchase this book on Amazon. You are not you're supporting a creative soul, and I'm not referring to Jan's, I'm referring to yours.
Yes.
You will feed your own soul by going through this process. It's cathartic, it can be gut-wrenching, it can be uplifting. Here's one. It's hard. It's I have to concur with Mr. Bob Farnham. He says tissue alert. I mean, a lot of the stuff. I'll show the page. It says, "What's the most hurtful thing I ever said or did to you?" I'm sorry, Mom. My mom is alive, and she could answer that. She could answer that. If I said that about my dad, he couldn't answer that. He couldn't answer that because he was taken away from me when I was 4 years old. But there are, in my life now, I see this massive juxtaposition between what I can't change, what I can't influence or affect. Only a question I can ask without getting an answer, but on the other side, the contrasting side, questions that I can ask and questions that can be answered. And I see your book falling into these three camps. There are those like you who have both parents that have passed. There are those that have one parent alive and one deceased. There are those that have both parents alive. And I should say there's probably a fourth category, which is the estranged relationships. The relationships where the people are alive, but the relationship is dead. There's so much opportunity there.
Yeah, the book is for reflection, but also for action in realizing that, I think as Scott Monty really beautifully put in a review that he kindly wrote, he said that we all think that time is infinite and we delude ourselves. We know intellectually it isn't, and we say, yeah, we'll get to that. So it's also about talking with the people in your lives, the loved ones, now while they're alive. And also, what are the things that I want my own children, Jared and Tyler, to talk with me about now? And so we're going to do that. I mean, I want to do it like today because there might not be a tomorrow, but it's going to happen. And I'm going to schedule it just like the push-ups. And it's really about that and about not regret, but listening, just simply asking and listening and finding that often you're just listening to yourself. You know, it's about your own voice that comes through from what your parents are saying or your loved one or your children are telling you. And I found a lot of solace and peace in that.
We have a comment from Beth Ellen Kopelman-Delinsky, and she said, Jan, I certainly knew your parents and they would be so proud of you.
Thanks, Beth Ellen. Your family is so amazing. And yeah, we were all close in our little neighborhoods. It was almost like a little Avalon, that movie Avalon back in the day. Thank you.
Jan, did you feel in asking these questions and knowing, what you just said obviously is that their voice, their message, their teachings comes through you, and there is that connection. But did you feel maybe frustrated or unfulfilled or a helplessness, so to speak, in the fact that these questions are just that? They're questions. They don't come with answers, and we live in a world where we demand closure and instant gratification and answers.
Well, that's the serendipity and the ironic synchronicity of it. We have talked, I think it was Warren Berger, about the beauty of questions.
Yeah. And
how there's so much in a question that is enriching. And you don't need necessarily the answer, in quotes. The question itself is mind-bogglingly informative. And don't be afraid to just keep asking. You know, we joke about how children keep asking why after you give them an answer. I mean, what more do we need to know than how they keep asking being the most enriching thing about their growth? So was I frustrated? Yes, at the beginning, when I was finding myself awake at night with these questions and pounding my head, literally headaches, and being distracted through the day. But when I wrote them down and read them to myself, I realized that the questions, in a way, didn't need answers. They were answers in themselves. And I had a conversation with my parents, with people who are still alive, with myself, and I was satisfied with that.
It's a beautiful statement. And Warren Berger's interview was certainly one of my favorites in terms of something that just stuck with me. A lot of that interview stuck with me, like this idea that companies shouldn't have mission statements, they should have mission questions.
Yeah.
And I think you just said it really best, which is, in many cases, the question becomes the answer. The question is the answer. You know, I think of so many things, like how frustrated I might have been with my kids in the past when they were younger, when they said, why, and how that should have been embraced and celebrated as keep it going for as long as possible, or answering a question with another question. Suddenly, I even think about that concept differently, that it's a great thing actually to answer a question with another question.
How
because
about, yeah, go ahead, finish.
No, I was just going to say, because likewise, it keeps it going, and that's what we want to do. We want to maximize the time, the moment, the opportunity we have on this earth and with the people that matter to us.
Yeah, I'm sure that, now with your kids, there's even, I think, a religious ceremony over a Jewish holiday where there are questions, and probably in a lot of religions and philosophies. Tom Mars might tell us that questions hold a great, hold a great truth. And it's ironic that we keep seeking answers for that truth.
What was the toughest question for you to have to put down on paper?
It's probably the last, which is kind of a cliche, but there were a couple that led to it. One was, where are you, Mom? Where are you, Dad? I mean, I know that we have all these ideas about life after death or whatever it is we feel, but I honestly just wanted to know where you are. Are you in here? Are you out there? Of course, I feel like they're in here, but I wanted some real concrete information. It wasn't about that. It was about my question that helped me realize where a thing or a person is and how that's such an abstraction for mindfulness. Everything is our consciousness. So where are they? They're right here. They're in my mindfulness. But that led to the question that was at the very end. It could go for both of my parents, happened to be to my father, so that all the questions wouldn't be repeat. And there were some that were distinct for each parent. But my last question to my father was, it was kind of like a rhetorical one that you hear from your children. It was, one more story, Dad? Can you tell me one more story?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of how precious time is, and what we wouldn't do, what we wouldn't trade, what we wouldn't pay just for one more story, one more moment, one more memory, one more minute. Oftentimes, I have that feeling when I say goodbye to my mom every time when I visit her in South Africa. When we arrive at the airport, and I just think 5 more minutes, just 5 more minutes. And it's a weird thing, Jan, because you don't feel that the day before or 2 days before or 3 days before. You just feel it right at the moment, right at that moment when you can appreciate the power of the importance, the value of 5 minutes.
Yeah. Reading the Stoics and hearing from Tom Mars over the course of your shows, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, and the understanding of negative visualization, and understanding of things like memento mori, remember we are mortal, with a skull. It's not about being obsessed with death. It's about realizing that through negative visualization, for example, that this walk that I'm doing with Kingsley, our dog, in the morning, where it could have been something that I was eager to finish so I could get onto a meeting, a business meeting, let's say, that I would never remember upon my deathbed. This walk with Kingsley might be my last, either on his behalf or mine. And so in that moment, and again, not to obsess, you think it, you realize the opportunity, and then you look at that walk with your dog as something that is, pure, beautiful, and you appreciate it, as you were saying about your mom. So yes, to grab onto that moment, we know intellectually through neuroscience that there is literally no such thing as the past and the future. It just doesn't exist. And even with Einstein's time travel, you're going to the moment that was in this moment now. And it's really probably a defensive mechanism that we need to put things in some kind of linear order. And so you have to kind of fight that and give yourself a little bit more information about that emotionally and take that moment.
I want to add one thing to that, which is when you said there is no past and there is no future, there is only now and there is only the present. We had this amazing conversation, as you recall, on the show last week about people who suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia, how they are only in the moment, in the here and the now. And it's frustrating for children or those around them to interact with them, and when they can't remember names or things that happened a day ago, a week ago, a year ago. But there is so much joy that they have in that moment. And I was thinking to myself, what an interesting use case for this book to ask them, those people suffering from dementia, 23 questions, their own version of 23 questions, like, what are you feeling right now? How are you? Whatever those questions are. I don't think there is a use case that this book and this concept, because, Victor Hugo said there is nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come. And this book is an idea. It's an idea about relationships. It's an idea about seizing time while we have it, and not living in regret. And that's why when I thought of a theme for today, I didn't know I was flitting between this idea of regret or inner struggle, but really what it came down to is finding inner peace. And I think that's what you've brought, hopefully, to yourself. Are you sleeping better, I should ask you?
Yes, I am. When the questions come, I welcome them. I'm not frustrated by them. It's an open door, and it's okay if they're all questions. That thing about dementia was enlightening to me too. And I remember seeing, and your viewers could probably find it in a Sunday. It was a CBS Sunday Morning News or Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley, and it was a segment on what this certain organization was doing with dementia patients. And what they were doing was having art classes with them. And the reason they were doing it was that it was very simple. They found joy, the dementia patients, the dementia people with dementia, they found joy in the moment of doing the art that they were doing. And it didn't matter to them that the next day they didn't remember what they had done, or that they were worried about the next day. And that was an education for the people in the organization as well, and the psychologists who put together this program, that both the dementia patients who could find joy in that moment and the people who are their loved ones could be at peace with their loved ones having only that moment. And my goodness, what a lesson for all of us. Mm-hmm. That the dementia person teaches us in a very odd way. In a very beautiful way. So I find real peace in that understanding of this moment is okay to be the only thing that I'm involved in right now with you. And then what's going to happen in the after show? I don't care.
Well, we get to do that in about 5 minutes, but I'm going to ask you one more question, actually two more questions. The first is the Corona question, which I feel is a much more natural segue. My second question will be a much more unnatural, as I say, from the sublime to the ridiculous. But the Corona question this week is, which person or persons, living or dead, have inspired you the most in your personal or professional life?
Yeah. They're really a trio. Is that fair? Does that break the rules?
Rules were made to be broken.
So my grandfather, Meyer, who came from Russia and out of violent history in Russia at that time, and never again then would meet his brother, who went on to live the rest of his life in Israel. But my grandfather Meyer, who I write about, and his grocery store that started the business in Washington, D.C. for the Zlotnicks, and a real sinuous connection to then my sons, Jared and Tyler, who honestly teach me so much professionally and about life. It is the lesson of my life to listen to them. They listened to me for a long time. I'm all ears now.
Wonderful. Well, here's the unnatural segue. This is a weird one, right? I mean, you and I, we live in a world of marketing and branding and brands, and you know, I know you're struggling with this love-hate relationship you have. How do we somehow get back to a different world, a world where we deal with clients and logos and taglines, and how do we find this connection now to go through this tremendous transformation, this moment of growth, learning, catharsis, to get back to what life looked like before? You know, as a guy who I know appreciates and is a purist when it comes to creativity, branding, marketing at its finest.
I would say, what's the Shakespearean phrase about sticking your courage to the sticking post? Put your courage to the sticking post. Courage. If there ever were a time to be open-minded, open-eyed, open-hearted about the purpose of courage, not just courage to do push-ups or to run a race or whatever, physical, or get through a mental ordeal, but the courage to live a change. And so to make a promise, for example, that the work that you do will help affect a change for the better. So for me, I've always had a love-hate, and now I realize more about this love-hate relationship with the work that I do. I'm in the business of branding. That helps a company make money and investors make fortunes. And I've made a promise that every conversation, where the initial conversation I have with a prospect before I would take on business, and continue to have that conversation as often as necessary to get through to the person who's not used to this kind of conversation, would be that branding, the idea of branding, even marketing, branding is not a marketing thing. To say to the CEO, to say to the marketing company, the marketing department, the sales department, HR, branding is not a marketing thing. It's a business thing. And if the business isn't culturally changed and supporting that brand position of doing good, then it's just another marketing thing. And you don't want to be that. And that's my promise. Can you do that? Show me how you're going to do that. Promise me too that this is going to be cultural, not just another marketing campaign. Make it your business to be a better culture, a better people, a better company that recognizes what the whole world, what your local community needs.
I feel so connected to you and to the book. I see another use case developing, which is 23 things I wish I could ask my brand today. There is going to be an interesting way to actually ask the questions of the brand while the brand is still alive, or while the brand is still has life in it. There you go. Oh, wait a second. This is going in the book?
I just wrote Joseph Jaffe, and then in quotes, 23 things I I wish my brand could be. You got it.
I mean, for me, it's been, as I said, a tremendous sense of pride to see you birth this new baby of yours. I love how so many previous guests on the show have provided endorsements and reviews of the book. I remember when you reached out to me and you were like, do you think maybe you could introduce me? I'm like, Jan, like, obviously, this is the whole point of being a regular on the after show. You've developed relationships with all of these people. I'm not even being a connector on LinkedIn. You're just being able to reach back out to them and say, hey, listen, remember our moment we had on the show? Here's something I did. Would you want to be a part of it? And I'm imagining that no one said no.
Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate it. And you remind me of something that just happened. When you write a book, I guess this is what happens. You get people who respond and ask you questions or have insights to it, etc. And one person, an old friend that I haven't seen for a long time, wrote and said, I'm going to get it. And I want, is there a way that you could sign it before I, share it with my mother? Her mother is elderly. And I wrote back to her and I said, I really appreciate it, Jody, but, you should sign it for your mother and have that conversation with your mother. I please consider this point of view about that. That's what the book's about. See if you agree, and then have that conversation with your mom and let her read your note in it. And she wrote back and said, you're right. Thank you.
Well, stand back and stand by, Dr. Phil, because there's a new doctor in the house. It's Dr. Jan, the most interesting man in the world. If you want to do push-ups with him, or you just want to be a part of this movement, purchase 23 things I wish I could ask my mom and dad today. You can follow Jan on the Instagram, the Twitter, connect with him on LinkedIn, find out more at janslittle.notebook.com. And most importantly, come and hang out with us on the after show. You can see down below bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. Jan, thank you for stepping in with less than 24 hours to go. This is much better than you coming on the show on January 26th, which is when you were meant to be on the show. And Jan, you are Chuck.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Thank you, Chuck.
Approved.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.